you're involved in many projects at once, do you ever itch to see them displayed chronologically? If that's the case, try selecting a timeline layout for your Notion database. It's the ideal way to gain a full understanding of the work at hand and prioritize adequately. To add a database with a timeline view, click on New Page in the sidebar, use the drop-down to indicate where to store your timeline, name it here, then select Timeline in the Add New section. You'll be prompted to either select an already existing data source in your workspace or create a brand new database from scratch by clicking on New Database. If you want to add a timeline from an already existing page, hit the / key in the page, type Timeline, then Enter. The same prompt will show up, but this time, the database will be embedded in the page. We call this an inline database. To turn your database into a subpage, you'll need to click on its 6-dot icon, then select Turn into Page. Voila! Your brand new timeline is here. Now, to save time, consider starting with the template. Click on Templates at the bottom of the sidebar to access the template picker. Then you can scroll down and click through a few template names until you find one you like. Alternatively, type what you're looking for in the search bar. In this case, we'll add the Projects and Tasks databases to our workspace. These templates are unique in that they come with specific built-in properties that do not exist in regular databases. But timelines can be created for any database type. Let's click on Get Template to add both templates to our workspace and pick the team space where you'd like them stored. In our case, we'll pick the company's product team space. For the purpose of this video, we'll focus on this Projects database. To learn more about these two powerful templates and how they work together, have a look at this video. Lovely! Let's change our page's icon. As you can see, this database already boasts a timeline view. To make it the main view of our database, let's manually drag it with the mouse and drop it to the left-hand side of the screen. In a timeline view, your database entries appear as rectangles on a timeline, with the left edge of the rectangle pointing to the entry's start date and the right edge showing the entry's end date. As always, database entries are in fact pages in themselves. In this case, every entry is a project, so one could use this empty page to store everything to do with the project, from initial brainstorms to related tasks and final products. Remember that this Properties section at the top is specific to database pages and allows folks to add additional dynamic information about the entry. Since timeline views display entries according to their dates, they require at least one date property in your database. Let's click outside this database page to go back to our database view. Here at the top right, clicking on Today will place today's date in the center of the timeline, embodied by this red bubble and vertical line. Next to it, this drop-down allows you to pick the scale of your timeline, from hours to months or years. The length of the database cards will adjust accordingly. Great! For demonstration purposes, let's replace this placeholder text with possible project names. Now, off to our Views menu, symbolized by these 3 horizontal dots at the top right of the database. In Layout, you are informed that this is indeed a timeline database. If your database were to have more than one date property, they would show up in this drop-down, and you'd be able to specify the date property on which to base your timeline layout. Since we only happen to have one date property, we can gloss over this option. Show Table does exactly what it says. Turn the toggle on, and a table-like visualization of your database will appear to the left-hand side of the timeline. This section of the view works much like table views would. To learn more about table views, have a look at this video. To revert this action, click on these 2 arrows pointing to the left, or simply untoggle. Finally, you can decide how you want your database pages to open up when you click on them. Side Peek, which is the default setting for timelines, opens pages on the right side, leaving the rest of the database visible. Center Peek keeps the database as the background, but this time opens pages in the center. And Full Page automatically opens the entries as full pages. Let's click on the breadcrumb here to go back to our database. As you may already know, the Properties section allows you to decide which properties are shown on the timeline cards and which ones are hidden. Click on the closed eye icon next to a property to show it, and click on the open eye icon next to a property to hide it. What's more, you can click on this tab to make the same maneuvers for the table to the left, provided that you decide to show it. In both cases, we recommend only showing a few properties to keep things neat and clear. Back in the main menu, you'll find your regular filter and sort functionalities. On top of those, timelines let you group your data according to one of your properties. This view already has entries grouped according to their status, causing your timeline to be divided horizontally like so. Now, status is a built-in property that divides status options into different groups. Status by allows you to decide if you'd like to divide your entries by each status option or by each status group. And you can sort the way your status groups or status options appear vertically. To illustrate this better, let's move these entries around by dragging and dropping them in the timeline. Ascending shows status progression from the top to the bottom, and descending achieves the contrary. To sort your factions yourself, select Manual, then drag and drop the 6-dot icon next to your properties to reflect your preferred order of appearance. To hide entries whose properties are left blank, turn this toggle on. Now, the Sub-Items option enables you to add sub-items to already existing database items that are also pages in themselves. To use this feature, click here, then click on Create New Relation. You'll be invited to rename the parent and sub-item fields as needed. Each will appear as new properties in your database. Parent item refers to your regular database entry. So in this case, we can call that project, and call our sub-items subprojects. Then hit Create. To demonstrate the way that sub-items work, we're going to use the table to the left. To add a sub-item, you can now click on the arrow next to your database item, then select New Sub-Item below. Give your new subproject a name, and click outside the box. Let's add a couple more subprojects. As you can see, each subproject is a page in itself, boasting the same properties that are yet to be filled. Notice that there are two extra properties now, the project and subproject property, both here to link subprojects to their projects and vice versa. In this particular case, sub-items allow you to break big projects into smaller chunks, all the while keeping everything in the same database for everyone to follow. This makes it easy for smaller teams to set out and accomplish what needs to get done. To hide sub-items from the table, simply click on the toggle next to the database entry. The next feature we'll unpack is Dependencies. Adding a dependency lets you connect database entries to each other in a linear way and visually understand how different projects and project phases depend on each other. This template already boasts a dependency, exemplified by these two different properties, is blocking and blocked by. Dependencies between projects are shown via this winding arrow, which you may have already noticed by now. To show you how to add a dependency, we'll delete these already existing ones by hovering over the arrow and clicking on the X sign. Now, place your mouse to the right of your database item, and you'll see this arrow and circle appear. Click on it, then drag your mouse over to the item you'd like to connect. Your first dependency is created, as this arrow shows. This indicates that until the bug bash is completed, you won't be able to start work on the new search functionality. Now, say that you would like the new search functionality to be ready before the Japanese launch. You'll need to repeat the same steps to create a dependency between both projects. Now, let's move this project to earlier in the timeline. You'll notice that the arrow is now red and not yellow. This means that the scoped timeline is flawed, that there is an overlap between the end of the first project and the beginning of the next one. To make your project work given this dependency, you'll need to drag your project on the timeline and drop it at a later date. Perfect! The arrow is now yellow, and while your project remains the same length, it has been pushed off a few days to accommodate the dependency. Furthermore, keep in mind that a database item can have multiple dependencies. We could have made it so that both of these projects were dependent on the completion of the bug bash. And note that a project's dependencies will also appear as properties in its page. You can add or remove dependencies from here too. As you can see, this feature can help you set logical start and end dates for projects, ones that take into account the dependencies between them. Next, you can set your load limit to 10, 25, 50, or 100 pages at a time. This is especially useful for timelines with many entries, whose data may be slower to load all at once. And as with any other kind of database view, a timeline view can be locked to prevent from accidental changes, copied, duplicated, or deleted. And we're done! As you can now appreciate, Notion timelines are way more than a Gantt chart. They give you complete flexibility to scope projects, adjust their timelines, and customize your workflow, and actually get work done inside their pages. We're confident you now have all the tools to create a timeline view that fully fits your team's needs, leaving you more time to focus on what matters.